Hi, welcome to the Divine Business Coach podcast. We have Chris Pan here in the flesh. So exciting. We've been figuring out mic situations and how to do this in real life versus just over Zoom. So super excited to have Chris here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chris is, how would you describe yourself?
A little of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little entrepreneur, a little musician, a little activist, a little investor, and a little bit of a workshop facilitator.
I don't know if I would say little for any of those things. I feel like you've been a pretty big entrepreneur and a pretty big musician.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Mm.
Yeah, so just so our audience can have some insight into your incredible background, you pretty much helped start Facebook, isn't that right?
I was part of the team that helped grow it from 50 million people to half a billion users. But it
Wow.
was a team, so it wasn't just me by any means.
Yeah, but still, that's
I
like
was part of the team. There was a
part of the
team.
team.
Yeah, team effort.
I like that mindset. I like that a lot. And can you just really quick before we get into it, because we're going to talk about some really exciting things. We're going to talk about Bitcoin and some investment opportunities and some fun stuff. But I think because a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, emerging entrepreneurs, or people who have been on their journey, can you tell us a little bit more about the business ventures that you've been involved in, just really briefly?
I started my career at McKinsey and Company, which is like the Navy SEALs of consultants. We would get dropped into a situation where we had to learn about a new industry in 1 to 2 weeks. And then by week 3 or week 4, we were presenting initial findings to the CEO. And in 2 to 3 months, the project was over. So I learned to learn very quickly. And
Mm.
I learned to understand things at like a high level, which I think people get lost in the weeds, and you have to know what to look for. So when you go into a situation, you have to quickly be able to assess, is this the right industry? What's going on with the industry? Is this the place that we should be playing in? There are people who are trying to be realtors right now, which is a terrible, terrible idea, and I'll explain that later. So I think the first thing for entrepreneurs is, am I in the right industry? Is this an
Mm.
industry that's growing? Does it have a future? Or is this something that's gonna just be a slog?
Mm.
And then my second experience was at Harvard Business School, and I was the co-president of the marketing club. So I focused on strategy and marketing, and it was all about understanding people, because in the end, people make decisions, and that's also powerful to understand. Which then led me to being a marketing director at PepsiCo at the age of 29, now 28, and I was running all of digital marketing for PepsiCo in China, the second largest market for Pepsi. And I went there because I wanted to learn how to use entertainment to get people to like a brand. And I
Mm.
figured if you can make sugar water, black, dark sugar water with bubbles cool, then you can make anything cool. And so that was a skill set that I sought after. So I'll just say early on in someone's career, I think it's not a terrible idea to go do things that you can learn from. In addition to making money, it's good to go get training. Let's call it the first 10 years of my life was pure training. And then I ended up at Facebook. I was there in 2007 till 2012 and got to take what I learned and actually put it to good use, which included data. That's the other thing I'll mention is everybody has an opinion, but it's rare that someone actually looks at the data, and the data will tell you what's actually broken about your business. And
Mm.
so you will have hypothesis, but then you need to actually, ask people hard questions and take a hard look at what's working, what's not working. When Facebook stopped growing at 50 million users, I was the one that bought SQL for Dummies. SQL is a language you use to pull data. And I asked one of the data scientists where the data was, and it was the holidays. So I took my own time and learned this new language and pulled all the data, pulled 100 some different analysis, and figured out why Facebook wasn't growing. And so I also think sometimes people give up, and the alternative is to actually go and figure out what's broken. You
Mm.
can throw the car away, or you can get into the hood and you can, really see what's happening.
Mm.
So then I had a goal at 22 to be financially free by 30. I was 29 and nowhere close to that goal. So then I, left my cushy job at PepsiCo, and then I knew the upside I was looking for only happens in tech or in finance. And I chose Facebook, and I was very lucky that it worked out. And so I hit my number at 35, and have been doing exactly what I want every single day.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
It's pretty badass. I like the realness of what you shared too. Like the numbers don't lie, right? And sometimes when it comes to business, you have to really look at, is this working?
Hmm.
Right? Look at the data. And I liked what you said about people too, that people are the ones that buy the product or service that we
Hmm.
have. So it has to appeal to them, and
Yeah.
that's really important. Yeah, super cool. So now you said you're kind of in this like love affair with Bitcoin, you said.
Yeah, I've jumped into so I started two other wellness companies, one on spiritual health, one on emotional health. And the emotional health one, I started 3 years ago and got it to a point where it's pretty much, the kid's walking on its own now. And then I saw the Bitcoin ETFs come out and I had a huge,
Mm.
oh my God moment, which for those of you, ETF is enabling people to buy Bitcoin from their retirement accounts. That's the so what. So you can buy it straight from your Fidelity account, your Schwab account. Vanguard currently does not offer it. So I now see people closing their Vanguard accounts and moving to Fidelity and Schwab. And my favorite is Fidelity. I think they're a crypto leader. I think they're an innovator. And so uh, in the same way you buy the S&P 500, in the same way you buy any other stocks, you can do the
Yeah.
same thing. And when I saw that, I realized that Bitcoin has matured. Bitcoin in its early days was like a little baby, screaming, crying, pooping. It was a mess, right? But finally, like everything, it grows up. And I feel like this is Bitcoin's, graduation. And
Mm,
now it's like a big boy now.
mm,
And it's ready for institution, it's ready for retail. It's like truly ready for mainstream adoption. And I wanted to get ahead of it and also help my family and friends understand this opportunity because it has been the single best asset class for the last 10 years. If you buy and hold, if you trade in and out of it, then good luck. But if you just buy and hold, you've done really well.
mm. It's kind of like stocks too.
Yeah.
Like you can get lucky with day trading if you know how to work the system,
Yeah.
but
If you're a day trader.
if you're a day trader, but that's a
Yeah.
lot of work,
It's a lot of work and most
Yeah,
people don't enjoy it.
yeah,
And so, I mean, the alternative is, the best bet otherwise has been probably the S&P 500.
yeah,
You just buy a whole, basket of stocks and you just let that ride.
yeah. Interesting. So for our listeners, Bitcoin is this new thing and it's like EFTs, blockchain currency. How
Mhm.
would you describe all of that to somebody who has like a medium understanding of what that all
Okay,
means?
so let me explain the problem that Bitcoin is trying to solve. Bitcoin came out in 2009 as a reaction to the financial crisis we had in 2008, which is we have a government, and we have not just our government, but other governments. They print money, right? And if you print money, uh, then it devalues everything that everyone already has. So, give you an example, since the last 4 years, a dollar in 2020 is only worth 75 cents in terms of its purchasing power, right? So,
Wow.
if you're someone who saved $100 in 2020, you effectively, now only have $75, which is a problem,
Wow.
right? Because you could see how, I mean, you could look at just the prices of everything has gone up, right? Everything's just more expensive, and it's not like the stuff's getting any better. It's
Yeah.
because our government continues to print money. And it's a secret tax that no one really talks about. Because if the government wants to raise taxes, we would all be up in arms, be like, hell no, no one. But what they end up doing is they just print more money and then they can spend that money to fund wars. They can, do packages that maybe benefit certain special interests, but it's not benefiting you and me. And so Bitcoin is a reaction to that. So what gives something value? It's this idea of scarcity, right? If you can literally, print more dollars, and if you can counterfeit dollars, then how good is a dollar? Because it just devalues it.
Mm,
But Bitcoin, because of the technology that the algorithms that it's using, Bitcoin is a financial innovation. It's a financial technology. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins ever. There's been 19.3 that's already been mined. These are all details, but let me just give you a kind of a radical example that I was in Africa with my business school classmates uh, right before graduation. We did a little trip. We were sitting around the table and we were playing poker. So we were using little leaves as a dollar and big leaves as $5,
mhm.
right? And so we're sitting there playing, and all of a sudden the wind blows and more leaves come on the table. And we're like, whoa, like how do we deal with this, right? Because everybody's holdings now is worth less than it used to be because there's more stuff on the table.
Yeah.
And it's just also a mess. And so why don't we use leaves as currency, right? Because you can just go make more of it. You can literally just go on a tree and make, and our dollar, is not far from it, sadly,
Mm,
because our government just keeps printing more of it.
mm.
And so Bitcoin is something that there's a finite amount. So the more money is printed, the more a Bitcoin is going to be worth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How do you mine Bitcoin?
With computers solving very complicated algorithms. The way I would think about it is, think about gold, right? People go in and mine gold,
Uh-huh.
and you have to expend a lot of effort to go mine that, gram or, a bit of gold. And Bitcoin's almost better than gold because gold, you can actually just go mine more of it from the earth. It's very expensive, but it's actually not finite. Whereas Bitcoin, you're guaranteed that there's only 21 million ever. And just for all the listeners out there, uh, Bitcoin is different than pretty much all the other current, coins and tokens out there because the other ones, they can just make more. But Bitcoin is like gold and all these other meme coins, shit coins, whatever, that is much more like a roulette table. So you can get rich off of it, but you can also lose your shirt. But Bitcoin is the one that if you hold it for at least 4 years, historically, you've never been down and you're usually up 10 to 100, 1,000x.
Mhm. Interesting.
So Bitcoin, the way to play it is just, we call it dollar cost average. You just take 5% of every paycheck, whether it's up, it's down, you just put it in, and over a 5-year period, you will be way up.
Mhm.
It's actually the easiest thing ever to do because you don't have to worry about, is now a good time to buy? Is now a bad time to buy? You just buy because that's just what you do.
Well, it's kind of like investing in a 401k or a Roth
Yeah, you just
IRA.
do it.
You just do like a
Yeah.
little bit every month. Yeah, because it's interesting because Bitcoin just hit its highest peak
Yeah, it just had a
recently.
little peak about a month ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's down probably 15% off its peak,
really.
but it's normal. I think the volatility is driven by there are people who are speculators and there are people who are traders and gamblers,
Hmm.
and that's what drives the volatility, right? Because the people who are in it for the long term, they essentially serve as the base layer of what the price will be, and then everyone else is trying to, outsmart each other. That's all that volatility. And also, a lot of the volatility has been driven by people who don't understand it.
Hmm.
And so when people come in, they put some money in, it does well, but then it goes down a little bit and then they freak and then they sell when it's low, then they lose money. And then all of a sudden it goes back up and then you chase it and then you buy high and then you end up selling low again. You do that a couple cycles and all of a sudden you're out a lot of money. That's the inexperienced person versus a disciplined investor would just be, hey, every month I'm going to put some in. I have friends who do that. They've been doing it since 2017. Every month, just buy a little bit and they're way up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting because I have heard that there was a dip a
Hmm.
while ago
Yeah,
with,
like 3 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah, 2 years ago. A
Um,
big one,
so is
like
it
a bear market.
like how would you compare it to the stock market? The stock market is known to go up, what is it, like
They're different.
9% every year?
Yeah, the stock market is a lot less volatile, but you're also getting way less returns.
Hmm.
So the stock market, it's a different animal, which is also why people don't understand Bitcoin, because one of the big arguments is, oh, well, Bitcoin doesn't generate cash, it doesn't have any inherent value, but people miss this idea that a store of value doesn't need to generate value. It's a store of value. It's the same reason people buy real estate. It's the same reason people buy art, because there's only so much land in Manhattan. There's only so much land in LA. Why is land in LA so valuable? Is because there's always demand for that piece of land, and it's finite, right? You
Mm,
can't go create more land.
yeah,
You can't go create more Bitcoin, and you can't go create more certain types of art,
yeah,
right? And you know that as the government prints more money, then the value of whatever it is that's actually scarce will go up.
yeah. But can you use it like in terms of value because money is in exchange for goods and services?
Sure.
But Bitcoin right
So
now,
Bitcoin right now is what I would call the equivalent of doing a wire transfer, right? Bitcoin, it makes more sense when you're doing big purchases. There is something called the Lightning Network, which you can use for smaller transactions like a coffee. But in the same
really,
way,
you can buy coffee
yeah,
with a
if you
Bitcoin?
if you go to El Salvador, you can do all sorts of things, right? They're very progressive. Like put it this way, you have Venmo, right? And you have
Yeah,
Zelle and you have
yeah.
wires. And they're three different technologies, right? Venmo is meant for coffee, Zelle is meant for like rent, and then when you're ready to buy a house, you use wires, right? You do a wire
Mm.
transfer. And so Bitcoin is meant more for like a long-term store of value. So you can still transact on it because people are buying and selling it all the time, right?
How does it work for buying like things like a coffee, right? Like, does the store have like, there's a
So
monetary equivalent in dollars for a certain amount
So,
of Bitcoin?
on the Lightning Network, what typically happens is they'll batch a bunch of small transactions into one bigger transaction. So you have a trade-off with different coins where um, the more secure something is, the slower it is, and the more just the slower, the slower the network is, right? You've got Ethereum, which is like a medium speed, and then you've got Solana, which is much faster. But you also trade off the amount of security. So the equivalent would be think about Fort Knox, think about gold, right? It's heavily protected and it's not as easy. Like you wouldn't take a gold bar and like go and like shave off a little bit, right? It's just not designed for that.
Yeah.
But you can use gold as a long-term store of value.
Hmm.
And so Bitcoin is more for long-term purposes rather than if you need something short-term, there's plenty of other ways to make that happen. And we're still in early days of Web3, and there will continue to be innovations to make it more widespread and more common.
Mm.
And also, there's also nothing wrong with using fiat currency for everyday transactions. Let's say you keep a few small percentage of your net worth in fiat currency. By fiat, I mean like the US dollar or in the pesos, or that can be your everyday, but you don't want to put your long-term investment, grade assets in cash because it's just going to erode, guaranteed.
You think so?
I mean, it has. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at unless the government starts to unprint money, it will just erode
Yeah.
because the government just keeps making it just prints more money. I mean, we're at all-time highs for government debt. We've
Yeah.
never been this in debt.
It's really interesting the financial situation that we're in, especially like here in the US. And we're here in LA, and I have one of my friends is from Sweden, and she was like, I spent $7 on a latte today. Like, what's up with that? And I was like, yeah, that's LA. Like, that's normal. It's like, this is like normal to spend $9 on a latte, right? And it's just right. It's like, well, how much would that be in Bitcoin? Like, I
Yeah,
wonder. So I feel like there's a lot of, people have either utmost confidence in Bitcoin and they're like, Bitcoin is the thing you need, like
sure.
crypto.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of skepticism and there's a lot of fear around
sure.
around crypto as well.
Well, there's a lot of people who don't understand it, and there's a lot of people who have misconceptions. Like another misconception is, oh, it uses a ton of energy, right? And it does actually use a lot of energy, but it's for good cause. Like you think about how much energy the U.S. banking system uses, every Chase, Bank of America, all that, and Bitcoin is moving to the last study I read. 40% of the mining happens fully with renewable energy, which is free energy, and then 70% is partial renewable energy, and that's moving rapidly. And so we're using things like hydropower that otherwise would just be wasted, or using, gas flare that can't be used for anything else. Like it's just energy that otherwise would just be expended anyway, that we can use to essentially protect this store of value from being corrupted. I mean, the other thing that's beautiful about Bitcoin is nobody controls it. There's not a single entity that can all of a sudden decide tomorrow, hey, you are illegitimate and your Bitcoin is gone.
Then how does the value of it go up and down?
The value of it goes up and down relative to a fiat currency like the US dollar because what people were willing to pay goes up and down because people come into the market when everybody's, all pumped about it, but they don't understand. So then they sell when it starts going down. So it's mostly because people don't understand it yet. I think we're still in the, top of the first inning, second inning for maybe call it the second inning for Bitcoin. By the time we get to, the third or fourth, fifth inning, it'll be way less volatile because people just understand that the way you play Bitcoin is just buy and hold.
Yeah,
Same with stocks, right? Because if you think about stocks, it has volatilities too.
for sure.
It goes up and down, but it's more well understood. So most people
It's
aren't
been
day
around
trading.
longer.
Yeah, most people they just know like you just buy and you forget about it, and then you
Yeah,
check in 5 years later, you're like, okay, I'm up like 50% or whatever.
yeah.
But there's a lot of people who don't understand Bitcoin, and so because of the miseducation and misinformation around it, it tends to be volatile, more volatile. But if you actually look at Bitcoin volatility, it's come down a lot, and it will probably continue to come down
Hmm.
as more people who actually understand this get into it.
Now, Bitcoin is one kind of crypto, right? Because there's different kinds of, or how does that?
Yeah, there's different layers or layer ones we call them.
Yeah.
There's different technologies and they're built with different, they're built with different things that they're optimized for. So Bitcoin is like the best for like storing value, whereas Ethereum is more, it's like, people say Bitcoin is gold. Ethereum is more like oil, it's something that you actually use to build stuff with.
Hmm.
And so they're different, like think about different websites, right? You have some websites that are doing like Amazon that are, doing commerce, whereas you have other websites where you're hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
And so in Web3, you have similar things where Bitcoin is the ultimate store of value.
Hmm.
Whereas, the other ones are more, um, they're more for building stuff
Yeah.
or speculating or gambling. I mean, crypto is also a 24/7 worldwide casino.
Yeah. So is the stock market, just not 24/7.
Yeah. And it's less worldwide because it's harder for investors in other countries to get access to some of our stuff.
That's true.
But crypto is truly a worldwide 24/7, always on casino.
Since there's only a finite amount of it, is it possible to ever like will it all be sold one day? Like where
Yeah,
do you
it'll
think
all
it
be
goes with
mined.
that?
It'll all be mined. And so when you understand that, um, I mean, it's almost fully mined, right?
Really?
Yeah, it's 19.3, 19.4 million have already been mined. So there's like a
Wow.
million and change left. Um, that's why the price is going to go through the roof. Because when people start waking up to the fact that, wow, this is like a truly, digital asset that you can, transfer. Like if you want to mail someone value in New York, what are you going to mail them, a gold bar? Right? Whereas Bitcoin, you could just send it over and it goes over pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Can the government ever ban Bitcoin?
it's tried. Like China tried to ban it, and I don't think it was fully successful. It's still mining. I mean, it can in terms of, Nigeria, they're trying to ban it.
Really?
Yeah, you can Google all this. Because its currency is deflating. You have countries like Nigeria, Argentina, Egypt, where I think in Egypt, I heard someone tell me that the currency devalued 40% in 1 week. So if you had a dollar, it was worth 60 cents the next week, in 1 week.
Wow, that's a
And
lot.
they also told me that, basically the guys that have Bitcoin are the ones the girls are interested in. And if you don't have Bitcoin, it's like, see ya.
Yeah.
In Argentina, it's well documented that the menus have stickers covering the price because they can't print menus fast enough to keep up with inflation.
Wow.
Because when the government's not able to control their spending, it just keeps printing money. People don't have confidence in the money. And also there's just more of it. So of course, the more, money there is, the higher the price of everything's going to be, and the less your savings are going to be worth.
But you use fiat currency to
Yeah.
buy Bitcoin, correct?
Currently, that's how we're doing it, right? We're currently on a fiat to Bitcoin system and vice versa. And so, there'll be a day when Bitcoin will be worth $1 million. I have no doubt it's coming. The only question is when. And
Yeah.
it's how fast people wake up to the reality of the disaster that is fiat currency. And
Mm,
then people start to say, okay, well, actually, this thing is going to be the better store of value. And actually, the better part is Bitcoin actually appreciates because it has this built-in mechanism called halving. So what happens is Bitcoin, every 4 years, the number of Bitcoin that gets mined into the world goes in half. So you have less Bitcoin. Actually, it's funny, tomorrow or the next day. So today, right now, 900 Bitcoin get mined every day, right? The next halving is literally tomorrow slash, it's between tomorrow and Saturday. So let's say Sunday. By Sunday, only 450 Bitcoins will be in the world. Okay. So if you think about eggs, if you go to the supermarket and there's 900 eggs, right? And it's like, call it a dollar. If all of a sudden overnight there's only 450 eggs, what happens to the price of eggs?
they go up.
Right. So that's why historically every 4 years you have a cycle because the halving happens and all of a sudden the supply shrinks and then the price goes up and then people start paying attention like, oh my God, this is going up. So then they pile in, but they don't really understand it. And then once it gets to a very high amount, some of the people who do understand it, they start pulling it out, right? And then the people who don't understand it, they dump their stuff as well. And then, but then the people who understand it, they buy back in when it's low. And then the
Yeah.
people who don't understand it, they don't. So then they end up losing their money.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so Bitcoin is something that's probably call it an hour to 2 hours to actually understand it. If you watch a good video, we're actually going to try to make some of these videos.
Yeah.
Once you understand it, I mean, or the other thing is just remember dollar cost average, which means buy a little bit every month, put
Yeah.
it in, forget about it, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. What is it that you're working on with Bitcoin?
Mostly around education. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm interested in helping other people understand this incredible opportunity, friends and family, and also I'm giving the commencement at Ohio State University in 2 weeks. So I'm going to help the class of 2024 understand this very simple way to accumulate wealth so that they can eventually buy a house,
Mm,
and eventually retire. There are a lot of people who don't have retirement accounts anymore because people aren't working at big companies that have pensions.
yeah.
So if you're someone listening who you're not thinking about saving, I would highly encourage you to look at the research that shows the earlier you start saving, the better off it because it compounds, right?
Totally.
And so I would say, think twice about that coffee you're getting, or think twice about whatever it is that you're spending, because
Yeah.
if you sacrifice in the short term, you will more than make it up in the long term.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. My first car out of college was a BMW, right? I ended up going to Facebook. PepsiCo was making 200K plus. At Facebook, they gave me 100K salary, but 100K of equity, right? That equity went 100x.
Yeah.
And then when I was working at Facebook, I bought a Mazda because I was saving money, and I just pulled
Mm.
back on my spending. But you pull back in the short term,
Yeah.
in the long term, you're way ahead of everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, half the things people buy, like people don't really need.
Yeah.
Like you can, just if you start to understand yourself as needing dopamine hits, half the things you buy are just for dopamine hits.
Yeah.
And you can get that through singing, through meditating, through nature, through having a good conversation. When you fill yourself up with natural ways, you don't need to spend as much money. You
Yeah.
can start putting away for actual, not only saving, because saving doesn't work. If you just save, it gets you part of the way there, but it's going to devalue over time. So you have to save and you have to invest.
Yeah. And you think Bitcoin is the right
I
opportunity
think it's
for you
literally
right
the
now?
easiest no-brainer activity, like opportunity right now.
Yeah.
I diversify. I buy a few, tech AI stocks. I have real estate in my portfolio. So I'm not all Bitcoin. I'm probably half Bitcoin. And then I have, call it 20% stocks and call it like
Yeah.
30% real estate.
Can I ask you what tech AI stocks you're into?
Actually, it's not that relevant right now.
Okay.
For the most part, meaning some of the stuff I buy is it's it's stuff that's still being developed. Like they're not public. Like sorry, some of the stocks I buy, it's like Apple and Google. I bought them because they're cheap.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
they
you know,
don't.
like Apple's gonna go up, Google's gonna go up.
Well,
Like,
there are two stocks that have been hammered because they haven't figured out AI yet, but I have high confidence that they will figure out AI.
yeah.
So I bought them because I think the minute they figure it out, they're gonna pop.
Yeah.
And then I bought some Spotify because I'm a huge music lover.
That's cool.
And I think they have a lot of pricing power because back in, my teenage years, I would spend $50 a month on music, right? Like CDs were $15 a CD,
I remember
right?
iTunes, you buy like the individual
Yeah, so
songs.
like it blows my mind that on Spotify I can get any song I want
Yeah.
for, $15 and my family's on there.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could charge me, I mean, well, now that I'm a shareholder, I'm like, sure, charge me $50. But I'm like, we have a lot of pricing power there.
Yeah.
Right? I think they're way undervalued, like pricing wise. It's just
Yeah.
going to take time for them to get it up there. But you look at the stock, it's done really well lately.
Yeah.
So I have a thesis for everything I buy.
Yeah.
So the other thing I'll say is, for people that are investing, make sure you understand what you're buying and you have a thesis.
Well, I want to ask you something like, because a lot of our listeners are aspiring entrepreneurs or people like sometimes people have invested a lot in their education and
That's
they're
great.
in debt from
Yeah.
like student loans and things or
Yeah.
like investing in other forms of education. What do you feel like the balance is between paying off debt versus investing for your future?
I generally think paying off debt is great. I mean, if you're paying 20 to 30%, depends on your interest rate.
Yeah.
If you have 2% interest rate, then I'm not worried, right? If you have
Yeah.
5%, but if you have if you have credit card debt, that's like the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if you're buying Bitcoin, like, and over the long term, you'll outperform 20, 30%.
Can you buy Bitcoin with a credit card?
No, but well, actually, no, you can't. You can like essentially take the money, have credit card debt, but buy Bitcoin.
That's
But
like
that's a
interesting leverage of
that's a
like,
really gnarly trade. I just wouldn't recommend it.
that
But,
would be really, really
but
risky.
if you did it over 4 years, you actually be way up. So like, I'm not advocating for that by any means. For the average listener, I would say, credit card debt is horrendous.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to keep up with 20, 30% interest rates.
Yeah.
So definitely get out of that. And then I would also say, even if you don't have money to invest right now, because some people don't, right? But start to learn and start to pay attention and say, you know what, every week I'm going to take a half hour and I'm just going to listen to a podcast, watch a video, talk to somebody, and start to learn.
Yeah.
And there's so many different investment styles, right? Like there's my meditation teacher and I joke, we're like, if every time we bought a Chipotle and we actually bought the equivalent in stocks, we'd be up so much.
Yeah.
The amount of money I've spent at Chipotle, versus
Chipotle
how its
too.
stock is doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like I would be so well off.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
just spend a half hour a week learning. And, investing is like a new language, like you're learning Spanish or French, right? So initially it's going to be confusing and it's going to be intimidating. So find yourself, somewhere that gives you the beginner version,
Yeah.
and just stick with it. And you'll be surprised that over a year, two, five, you'll just know the language and you'll have also an intuition about it.
Yeah.
And it'll just be natural for you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too because you had me take that money archetype quiz, the money
Yeah,
animal quiz.
moneyanimalz.com, everybody. Go take that and let us know your type.
Yeah, what is your money animal? I'm the beaver. I got the beaver.
Yeah, and I'm the Phoenix. There's
Yeah.
8 types. My friend Andrea developed this, and I think it's the coolest survey ever. If you like Myers-Briggs, if you like Enneagram, if you like any of those things, there is now a personality, like an investment style test.
Yeah, and I think it's important because some people are more risk averse than others,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
everybody has a different tolerance for risk
Yeah.
and like, it's interesting. The thing about leveraging money and like I've leveraged debt to grow my business and I've like, you think about like real estate investing
Sure.
and like leveraging debt and like just like the moving of money,
Yeah.
investing for your future. And so much of it is our capacity
Sure.
within yourself. Like, can you
Yeah.
handle that
Of course.
nervous system activation of
Yeah.
like Bitcoin going up and down? Like,
Just go look at it.
don't look at it.
But money is energy.
Yeah.
And so our ability to work with money has a lot to do with energetic blocks,
What would you?
traumas, all
Mm,
all of that, right?
yeah.
All of the I don't feel enough, I'm not worthy, like all those conversations come right into the heart and center of, the financial conversation. The actual mechanics of investing is actually really easy. Where people get tripped up is all the financial psychology of it.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say? Because I know that you've taken some big risks in your career, like even taking the leap to leave Pepsi and go to Facebook,
Sure.
like that, I'm sure like that was
Yeah.
a risk you didn't know. Facebook wasn't
No, I didn't
the
have an offer until 6 months later.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
the Facebook wasn't what it is today, right?
No,
Like you
it was
didn't
just
know. It
risk
was a
after risk.
gamble. It was
Yeah.
a gamble.
I'm a Phoenix, right? Phoenixes are, constantly reinventing themselves.
So what is your mindset in terms of taking the risk? And even with the things like you've done VOMO and like the like
I
all
have I have thesis, and I go with conviction and the word on my bracelet right now on my wrist is the word bamboo. And so I'm someone who believes that, like a bamboo, it'll grow 3 inches in 5 years. But then when it's ready, it'll do 30 feet in a day.
mm,
Right? But then during the first 5 years, you might give up on year 3, year 4, year 5. You're like, this is dead. Nothing. I mean, I have, my dad's like, why are you doing whatever you're doing? Like, I have close friends like, why are you doing this my intent thing? It's never going to go anywhere. Why are you doing this FOMO thing? But I have conviction.
yeah.
Like I know in my soul, like, but I also use logic, right? Because I use logic, which is, I looked at a backward trend, which is people aren't going to church, right? Church attendance is all-time low, but people still have that spiritual need. So I created my intent because I thought I could fill that need with something that's dinner table friendly.
Yeah.
With VOMO, I understood very powerfully the healing power of singing.
Yeah.
And right now we don't sing because we don't go to church.
Yeah.
And most singing is, at a karaoke thing that we rarely go to, and it's very performance
Or in the
oriented, very,
shower.
very judgy. It's in a shower, but it doesn't happen regularly, and the songs are too hard. There's too many lyrics. The melodies are tough. None of us are Whitney Houston or Celine Dion. So I was like, there's a huge opportunity to build a platform for people to do group singing that's easy. So I have very strong thesis behind everything I do. I look at the market. I'm like, there's a huge market for X, Y, and Z.
Now, what do you look for in a market when you're looking for things like that? Because I think a lot of people, they say like do what you love, follow your passions, but then I think a lot of people forget about the marketability and the market demand for things when pursuing a passion. So, what would you say is the balance between that, like going after something you love versus like looking for a market and a market demand for something?
I mean, I think sometimes things should stay just as hobbies, because
Yeah.
when you put too much pressure on it, you just don't enjoy it as more. Um, I think doing what you love, let's see, how would I think about that? I think you can not everyone also needs to disrupt an industry. There's a lot of value to just, doing things that it depends on what your goals are and
Yeah.
who you are and like what you
And your
signed
money
up for.
archetype.
Yeah,
Your archetype as a human.
it depends on like what you signed up for in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing that says you have to build multi-million dollar, billion-dollar businesses by any means. So I think it really tunes into your intention.
Yeah.
It's all about tuning into your calling, into your purpose. And also I think of each job and each thing that you do as having lessons. Each investment is a lesson. It's a lesson in greed, it's a lesson in fear, it's a lesson in courage, right? So everything you do, if you look at it in the context of intentions, it shifts everything into less about the outcome of, oh, did I make a certain amount of money? And you can start looking at things and, oh, what did I learn in this experience?
Yeah.
What did I learn when I was making somebody bracelets? Or what did I learn as I was solving this problem of, oh, I need to get my costs way down, or I need to scale, I need to whatever, right? They're just different lessons.
What have been some of the biggest lessons that you've learned along your journey in terms of business and investment and financial independence?
Um, what have I been learning? I think for me, it's just I just go with my gut. I go with my heart. Like one of my favorite
Mm,
quotes is follow your heart no matter what. So I had a great time building my intent. Uh, let's say the first 3 or 4 years, it was really, really fun. And then it kind of hit a peak in terms of the bracelet side. Then I really wanted to pivot to giving more workshops and creating more experiences. And then let's call it years 4 to 7 were spent trying to build experiences. And they all kind of like they were okay, but they didn't do what I thought it would.
yeah.
But I kept trying anyway. And then by year 7, I kind of handed off that whole thing to somebody else. And I really shifted into VOMO, which is, voice movement, which is singing because I love music. And that's, really creating a lot of experiences. And then, but I knew like my intent was going to come back. It was just a matter of imagining like you're building a house and you're like building different parts of the whole thing. And then I took 2.5 years and built VOMO. And then I'm like, okay, it's kind of ready to do its own thing. And now I'm building this new platform to help people learn how to save and invest. And now I'm finding partners to do that. And those three things to me is like a 1, 2, 3 punch for something I call Spirit Lab, which is helping people, every Sunday to release stuck emotions, connect, spiritually, and to start thinking about investing for the future.
Mm,
And that to me is a secular church that I'm building.
cool.
So the lesson is, just tune into the vision that you have for yourself. Because I got this vision 10 years ago that I was going to build a secular church.
Mm,
But that's my calling, right?
yeah.
Everyone has a different calling. I don't know what your plan is.
Yeah.
But it's between you and your meditations.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, before we hopped on and started recording, we were talking a little bit about like sticking with things and
Yeah.
doing things for a while, and even hearing you speak about VOMO is your singing movement,
Yeah.
and then my intent is your bracelet company.
Yeah, the spirit, yeah, the spiritual lesson.
The spiritual
I
lessons
think
and
of
bracelets.
each bracelet has an intention, and each intention is a lesson on your spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Life is a series of intentions.
Yeah. But it's interesting because we were talking about how like my generation, millennials and younger generations, how like we want everything so fast, like we'll stick with
ADD,
things. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we'll do something for 6 months and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't make 100 grand in 6 months,
Yeah.
like
Pivot.
pivot.
Yeah.
And like what would you say, because you've created so many movements and you've done so many things, you've built so many masterpieces, what would you say for the mindset, even with investing, like in Bitcoin, and you're talking about like just don't sell, like hold it, like this mindset of like really sticking with things and seeing things through?
I think it's the serenity prayer. It really goes back to there's a wisdom to knowing when to stick it through and when to pull. So
Hmm.
I don't know what the answer is for you, but there's also a song you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Like in poker. So yeah, I mean, I think what I would say? I would say there are habits that will help you figure it out, right? One of the habits is probably most foundational is just meditating every day.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes every morning. I would highly recommend everybody, the minute you wake up, just take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you don't, and then work your way up to 20,
Yeah.
right? And just connect to your breath or if connect to a word. Think of a word and just repeat that in your mind. There is a book called Bliss More that my friend and mentor Light Watkins wrote. It's on Spotify. It's free.
Oh, wow.
And normally it's a $1,500 weekend course, but he essentially took it and put it into a book and put it into an audiobook. So if you don't know how to meditate, I would highly recommend you just like you can get that book for free on
Mm,
Spotify if you have a premium subscription. I would say meditation is a powerful tool to get to know your own path. Obviously, journaling is another one. I mean, these are timeless, proven techniques
yeah.
to help you figure out when to hold and when to fold.
Yeah.
I can't tell you if it's 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, but that's up to you and your pen.
Yeah. Yeah. Meditation has been a big part of my life. I've had a daily meditation practice for over 4 years,
Yeah,
and it's been one of the most profound things that's helped me.
yeah,
Just like the ADD brain, just like silence. Like, shh.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's interesting and it's cool to hear about your timelines with things like even you talking about my intent. You're like, yeah, you're like 7. I'm like, you're 7. I'm like going into my 3rd year in business and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like trying to wrap my mind around year
Yeah.
7. And I think it's really good to think about these things, thinking about long term with investment, with business, like we will end up there one day, right? I like Jim Rohn says in 10 years you will arrive.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna the 10
You're around
years will
somewhere.
come. Yeah.
And you know, maybe the cycles are just faster, and that's okay because my dad worked at one company for 20 some years.
That was a different time. I feel like that was a very
Which
different
is okay.
economy back
Maybe,
then, you
yeah. So
know?
maybe 3 to 6 months is okay as long as that's what you're meant for.
But I think there's something about like you were talking about with Bitcoin, like sticking with it. And I think with business investing, there's something about sticking with things in the long
Sure.
term and like
Yeah.
really being committed and going
Well,
through
I
those
think I
ups
think
and
you have to
downs.
know if it's meant for you or not. Like I have a
Yeah.
friend who was a, you know, is a model, um, started getting the sound healing, but also a realtor, and did the realtor thing for, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, and left,
I
which
did the
which
realtor thing for a hot minute.
which
Same thing.
which
Yeah.
was the right move,
Yeah.
right? Like that is an oversaturated, like there's, you know, there's just there's no future there.
Oh, I did real estate. I was a realtor for like many years ago, like almost 10 years ago. And I was like, this is a horrible market. Like
Yeah.
I was like, this is so oversaturated. Like,
So you have to know when you're in one of those situations where it
yeah,
actually, like I went to med school for 3 weeks.
no
Yeah,
way.
so that was a situation where in 3 weeks I quickly figured out that it wasn't my path, and I'm glad
Mhm.
I didn't do 3 years.
Yeah,
So there's a principle in startup culture called fail fast, right? If it's not meant for you, just get out. Like
yeah,
pull the band-aid,
yeah.
right?
And I feel like a lot of people like because I've worked with clients and I dealt with this too because there was a period where like I tried a lot of things. I was like acting, singing, and I was like, I can't figure out like what is the thing.
Yeah.
How do you let go of that like if it doesn't work, the fail fast, like that failure? How do
I
you
I
move
love
on?
I love diving into things, whether it's businesses or even relationships. I like go all in. I realize it's either working or it's not, and then, you know, I move on. And I think it's a recognition that time is precious, and why would you want to drag out med school for 3 years if you in 3 weeks realize it's not your path,
Yeah.
right? So like, but other things I stick through. So it's the wisdom to know the difference between when you should stick it through and when you should quickly pivot.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
meditation
Meditation.
or do some psychedelics.
That helps too.
Yeah,
Fast track.
yeah. Take the ski lift up the mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Should we talk
Yeah.
about real estate as
Yeah,
we?
yeah. You were kind of like dabbling with like the realtor. You're like, that's a horrible market to be in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're doing some stuff with real
So
estate
yeah,
now,
I'm
yeah?
launching a platform. Think of it as like Uber for real estate, where we're going to help people buy and sell homes without the need for a realtor, which is a 5%, you know, on top of a massive asset. We're going to save the American homeowner $80 billion
Wow.
in 5 years. I mean, right now it's $100 billion of revenue that is, you know, spent on brokerages.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So is this like something that's ready to go to market now, or like where are
Yeah,
you with that?
I had the idea on March 16th, the day that after the settlement news was announced. There's a huge settlement that's basically blowing up the industry as it is. It's being accused of being, you know, anti-competitive because they, you know, they've essentially fixed commission rates at, you know, 5 to 6%, right? Which doesn't need to be because if you think about the average transaction, there's not that much work to be done in today's day and age with technology.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, to buy a house, like you have Redfin and Zillow, you find your house, you do need someone to guide you through it, but that's like a coach. And we can coach. I have 10 plus years of coaching experience,
Yeah.
helping people find their intention, helping
Yeah.
people change, not, you know, change careers, but to have the insight to start to realize maybe they need to change careers.
Yeah.
All those things that I'm totally comfortable in helping people make big decisions.
Yeah.
And so we're going to apply a lot of the coaching expertise using AI and also humans on the back end. If you need somebody to talk to, we'll have that available for you as well. And I think we're going to do really good for the American homeowner because, you know, right now, if you sell $1 million home, you're paying $50,000 to brokers.
Yeah.
With our platform, you'll spend 5,000.
Interesting.
Yeah, or even less.
And are you helping people with like the legal aspects
All
or
of it,
like
end to end, the whole bit.
interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating with technology, how industries shift
I mean,
and
you look at every industry, right? We used to have stockbrokers that you'd call and it would be $200 to place
yeah,
the
that's
trade.
true. Yeah, that's a good point.
E-Trade comes through, we don't have it anymore.
Yeah,
We used to
interesting.
call people to buy airline tickets.
Yeah.
And then Expedia came around. We don't have that anymore. We used to go to record stores and buy CDs. And then we went to MP3s and then we went to streaming, right?
Mm,
Things change. I mean, if you go back far enough, we used to have people that were telephone operators.
yeah.
You have to like sit and wait for them to connect your call,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So what should people look out for with this new real estate venture that you have coming up?
Well, with all my ventures, find me on Instagram. Find me chrispan.com. I'm rebuilding my website as is. Um,
Such a great name. So concise and easy to spell. Chris Pan.
like
Like,
Peter Pan, but Chris with a CH. And what else? Yeah, I mean, I think if you're in the market to buy and sell a home, think twice about using an agent. I think using a buyer's agent will be especially dangerous come July because some of the homes on the market will be offering a commission and some of the homes will not. And if you work with a buyer's agent, they're likely to steer you towards homes that have a commission, right? Because it's natural that they want to get paid,
of
but
course.
it may not be the best home for you. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an extra dangerous market to be working with a buyer's agent. And on the listing side, I'm selling my house in by the time this podcast comes out, probably, or in 3 months. So actually, hopefully not that long. But my plan for selling my house is I'll do it by myself. I'll put it on
Are
my
you
tenant's
gonna
bill.
house?
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm
Oh,
gonna go to Costa Rica and I don't know,
Tulum.
or Tulum.
Tulum.
I'm doing the nomad thing for a little while.
Are you?
I am.
That's really
And
fun.
I am gonna for sale by owner. And then I'm gonna hire someone for 50 bucks an hour, maybe 35, 50 bucks an hour, like a task rabbit, right?
Yeah.
To just come and unlock the door, turn off the alarm, turn on the lights,
Yeah.
show the house. 3 hours later, do the opposite, and they're done.
Yeah.
And I'll probably spend $1,000 for all the open houses and showings.
Yeah.
I'm not spending, this is in the tens and actually, if I paid the traditional fees, this would be like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's
I'm going to
crazy.
spend a fraction of that.
Yeah. And you can live for a long time off that in Costa Rica.
I could do a lot of good with that. I
Yeah.
could donate it to charity.
That's true.
I
Yeah.
could do all sorts of interesting things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So chrispan.com is your website.
Yeah.
Instagram,
Chris
chrispan.
Pan, yeah, find me and would love to connect. And if you need help with any of the stuff we talked about, just send me a DM. I respond pretty quickly.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. This
Thank
was
you.
lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for everybody who tuned in. And yeah, connect with Chris and let us know in the comments. Let us know what your money animal is too. Go take that quiz. I'll put that link below.
Moneyanimal.com. Super fun.
Awesome.
Be well.
Be well.